The gunshot rang out across the parched Wyoming landscape as Rebecca Edwards ducked behind a weathered oak tree, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. It was 1878, and the promise of a new life in Challis, Idaho, seemed further away with each passing moment. The stagecoach that had been carrying her lay overturned 100 yards back, the driver dead and the other passengers scattered to the winds when the bandits struck. Rebecca's pale blue dress, once pristine, was now stained with dust and sweat. At 22, she had already seen enough hardship to last a lifetime. She pressed a hand against her still flat stomach, knowing the tiny life growing inside her would soon make itself known to the world. A child conceived with a man who had promised her everything, then disappeared into the night with her savings and her trust. "Come out, pretty lady," called a gruff voice. "We ain't gonna hurt you." Much cruel laughter followed, and Rebecca shuddered. 3 men had attacked the stagecoach, and she had no doubt about their intentions should they find her. Her options were few. She could run, but the vast open terrain offered little cover. She could fight, but with what? The small knife in her boot would do little against their revolvers. A twig snapped nearby, and Rebecca held her breath. Then came the thunderous sound of hoofbeats, followed by more gunshots. Different ones this time, sharper, more deliberate. The bandits shouted in confusion, their confidence giving way to panic. "Drop your weapons," commanded a deep, authoritative voice. "Or the next bullet won't miss." More gunfire erupted, followed by the sound of a body falling heavily to the ground. Rebecca peered cautiously around the tree to see a tall figure on horseback, a Winchester rifle poised expertly in his hands. 2 of the bandits lay motionless on the ground, while the third had his hands raised in surrender. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, keeping his rifle trained on the remaining bandit. He was dressed in worn denim and a dust-covered leather vest, a red bandana tied loosely around his neck. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, but Rebecca could make out a strong jaw dusted with a few days' worth of stubble. "Tie yourself to that tree," the man ordered, tossing a length of rope to the bandit. "Do it tight, or I'll do it for you." The bandit complied, his hands shaking. Once he was secured, the stranger turned, scanning the area. His eyes, the color of a summer sky, locked onto Rebecca's hiding place with unnerving accuracy. "You can come out now, madam," he called, his voice gentler. "You're safe." Rebecca hesitated, then slowly emerged from behind the tree. She stood tall despite her fear, clutching her small traveling bag to her chest like armor. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Those men, they killed the driver. I don't know about the others." The stranger nodded grimly. "I saw the overturned coach a ways back. Found one passenger hiding in the brush, elderly gentleman. He's the one who mentioned a young woman had run this direction." He touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "Vincent Thorne, madam. Most folks just call me Vince." "Rebecca Edwards," she replied, then swayed slightly as relief washed over her, weakening her knees. Vincent moved quickly, catching her elbow to steady her. "Whoa there. When's the last time you had water or food?" Rebecca shook her head. "This morning before we left the station." He led her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, and retrieved a canteen from his saddlebag. "Drink slow," he instructed as he handed it to her. "Where were you headed?" "Challis," Rebecca answered between careful sips. "In Idaho territory. I have a position waiting for me there as a schoolteacher." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Challis, that's a fair piece from here. At least another week's journey, and that's assuming no more troubles like this." He glanced at the bound bandit, then back at Rebecca. "I'm headed in that direction myself. Got a small ranch about 2 days' ride from Challis." He studied her face, noting the exhaustion etched in her features despite her youth and beauty. Her auburn hair had begun to escape its pins, framing a face that showed both vulnerability and determination. "If you don't mind riding double, I can get you to the next town, Sweetwater. It's about 4 hours from here. We can find transport for you from there." Rebecca hesitated, weighing her options. Trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford, yet this man had saved her life, and she had few alternatives. "What about him?" she asked, nodding toward the captive. "The sheriff in Sweetwater will send men back for him and the bodies," Vincent answered. "He won't be going anywhere." After a moment's consideration, Rebecca nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne, I accept your offer." Vincent helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her. Rebecca stiffened slightly at the proximity but relaxed as they set off at a steady pace. The warmth of his chest against her back provided an unexpected comfort as they rode away from the scene of violence. As they traveled, Rebecca learned that Vincent was 30 years old and had been ranching in the territory for 5 years after serving as a scout for the Army. He spoke little of his past beyond that, but his knowledge of the land and confident handling of his horse told her he was a man accustomed to the harsh realities of frontier life. By the time they reached Sweetwater, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The small town consisted of one main street with various establishments: a general store, saloon, sheriff's office, and a modest hotel. Vincent guided his horse to the sheriff's office first, where he recounted the stagecoach attack while Rebecca sat quietly in a wooden chair, fatigue washing over her in waves. Sheriff Miller, a graying man with kind eyes, took notes and promised to send deputies to collect the bandit and investigate the scene. "You're lucky Mr. Thorne happened along, Miss Edwards," the sheriff said. "Those were the Delaney brothers and their cousin. Been terrorizing coaches between here and Laramie for months." After finishing with the sheriff, Vincent escorted Rebecca to the hotel. "You should get some rest," he said as he paid for her room despite her protests. "I need to send a telegram and take care of a few things in town. We can figure out your onward journey in the morning." Too exhausted to argue further, Rebecca thanked him and retreated to the small but clean room. After washing away the dust and fear of the day with water from the pitcher and basin, she changed into her nightgown and sank onto the bed. Her hand drifted to her stomach again, and tears finally came for the child who would grow up without knowing its father, for her own naivety in believing Alexander's lies, and for the uncertain future that lay ahead. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through thin curtains. Rebecca dressed in her second-best dress, a simple green calico, and pinned her hair neatly. She had slept better than expected, though her dreams had been filled with gunshots and the steady blue gaze of her rescuer. Downstairs, she found Vincent already awake, speaking with a portly man near the hotel entrance. He spotted her and immediately excused himself. "Good morning, Miss Edwards. I trust you slept well as could be expected," she replied with a small smile. "Thank you again for your kindness." Vincent nodded toward the hotel's small dining room. "I took the liberty of ordering breakfast for us both. We should discuss your journey forward." Over plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, Vincent explained the situation. "The next stagecoach to Challies won't come through for 5 days. The attack has everyone spooked and they're changing routes." Rebecca's heart sank. 5 days? I can't afford to stay at the hotel that long, and I'm expected in Challies in 2 weeks to prepare for the school term. Vincent took a sip of coffee, considering. "I have another option to propose. As I mentioned, I'm headed back to my ranch, which is on the way to Challies. I could escort you there and then on to Challies when you're rested." He met her gaze directly. "I know it's unconventional for a single woman to travel alone with a man, but I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be safe." Rebecca studied him, searching for any sign of deception like she'd seen in Alexander's charming smile. Instead, she found only straightforward honesty in Vincent's weather-worn face. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" she asked softly. Vincent set down his cup. "My mother was a schoolteacher. She always taught me that education was the future of the frontier. Helping you reach Challies safely would honor her memory." His eyes crinkled slightly. "Besides, it's on my way." After breakfast, Rebecca found herself once again riding with Vincent Thorne, this time on a wagon he'd purchased in town along with supplies. Her trunk, recovered from the stagecoach by the sheriff's men, was secured in the back. The journey to Vincent's ranch took them through stunning landscapes, rolling hills that gave way to more rugged terrain as they approached the mountains. Vincent proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the land. Though not talkative by nature, he answered Rebecca's questions patiently and occasionally offered observations of his own. They made camp the first night in a sheltered hollow near a small stream. Vincent efficiently set up a simple camp, complete with a small fire over which he cooked a surprisingly tasty stew. After ensuring Rebecca was comfortable on a bedroll placed respectfully distant from his own, he took the first watch. Rebecca lay awake for some time, watching the stars and listening to the occasional sounds of wildlife. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy 2 months ago, she felt a strange sense of peace. The wilderness, for all its dangers, seemed more honest than the civilized world that had judged her so harshly when Alexander's betrayal became known. "You're still awake," Vincent observed quietly from his position near the fire. Rebecca turned to look at him. "How did you know?" "Your breathing," he replied simply. "It changes when you sleep." She sat up, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders against the night chill. "I have much on my mind," Vincent nodded, not pressing for details. The silence between them was comfortable, undemanding. "May I ask you something, Mr. Thorne?" "Vince," he corrected gently. "And yes. How did you come to be a rancher here? You mentioned the army, but nothing before that." Vincent prodded the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. "I grew up in Pennsylvania. My father was a blacksmith, died when I was 15. Mother struggled to keep us afloat on a teacher's salary. When the war came, I enlisted." His expression darkened. "After Gettysburg, I couldn't go back to that life. The East felt confining. When the war ended, I drifted west, worked as a scout for a while, saved enough to buy land." "And you've been alone all this time?" Rebecca asked, then immediately regretted the personal nature of the question. "I'm sorry, that was forward of me." "It's a fair question," Vincent replied, unbothered. "There was someone once back east, Mary. She married another while I was at war." He shrugged. "Out here, most women are already spoken for, and the rest aren't eager to take on the hardships of ranch life." Rebecca considered his words. "Yet you seem content." "I am," he agreed, glancing around at the wilderness. "This land has its own kind of peace." The next day brought them to Vincent's ranch by late afternoon. Nestled in a valley with mountains rising majestically in the background, the place was more impressive than Rebecca had expected. A sturdy 2-story house built of logs and stone stood at the center, flanked by a large barn, corral, and several outbuildings. Fields of hay stretched to the east, while cattle grazed on the grasslands beyond. "It's beautiful," Rebecca breathed as they approached. Vincent's expression softened with pride. "Built most of it myself with help from my foreman Miguel and his sons." As if summoned by his words, a man emerged from the barn, waving in greeting. "Senor Vince, you return early," called the man, who appeared to be in his 50s with silver streaking his dark hair. "Trouble on the road," Vincent replied as they drew closer. "Miguel, this is Miss Rebecca Edwards. She's continuing to Challies in a few days, but will be our guest until then." Miguel removed his hat and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Thorne Ranch, señorita. My wife, Elena, will be happy for female company." True to Miguel's prediction, his wife, a warm, round-faced woman who lived with her family in a comfortable house near the main one, embraced Rebecca like a long-lost daughter when they met. Elena insisted on preparing a special dinner to welcome her, brushing aside Rebecca's offers to help. "You rest," Elena insisted, patting Rebecca's hand. "The journey is tiring, no, especially for—" Her eyes dropped meaningfully to Rebecca's midsection, then back to her face with a knowing look that held no judgment. Rebecca's breath caught. "How did you?" Elena smiled gently. "I have 5 children of my own. I know the look. Don't worry, your secret is safe if you wish it to be." That evening, after a delicious meal shared with Vincent, Miguel, Elena, and their 2 youngest sons who still lived at home, Rebecca retreated to the comfortable guest room Vincent had prepared for her. The room was simple but welcoming, with a handmade quilt on the bed and curtains that Elena had sewn herself. As she prepared for bed, Rebecca gazed out the window at the star-filled sky. The ranch had an unexpected feeling of home that tugged at something deep within her. She had planned to stay in Challies indefinitely, building a new life away from the whispers and condemnation that had followed her in Boston after Alexander left her pregnant and abandoned. But perhaps, no, she couldn't allow herself to form attachments here. This was merely a temporary haven on her journey. The next morning, Rebecca woke to the sounds of the ranch coming to life, roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, men calling to each other as they began their day's work. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs to find Vincent at the kitchen table, studying what appeared to be ledgers. "Good morning," she said hesitantly, not wanting to disturb him. He looked up immediately, closing the book. "Miss Edwards, did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "And please call me Rebecca," Vincent smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "Rebecca, then. There's coffee on the stove, and Alina brought over some fresh bread and preserves earlier." As Rebecca prepared her breakfast, Vincent explained that he needed to ride out with his men to check on a section of fence that had been reported damaged. "I should be back by midday. Please make yourself at home. Alina mentioned she might come by to show you around if you're interested." After he left, Rebecca explored the house, impressed by its practical elegance. Though bachelor simple in many ways, the home showed signs of care and attention to detail, well-crafted furniture, shelves lined with books, and windows positioned to capture both light and views. On a small table in the sitting room, she found a framed daguerreotype of a handsome woman with Vincent's eyes, presumably his mother. Alina arrived as promised, bringing her youngest son, a bright-eyed 10-year-old named Carlos, who was eager to show Rebecca the new foal born just days earlier. The morning passed pleasantly as Alina guided Rebecca through the workings of the ranch, from the kitchen garden where they grew vegetables to the smokehouse where meat was preserved for winter months. "Vince is a good man," Alina commented as they sat in the shade of an apple tree taking a break from their tour. "He works hard, treats everyone fair, never raises his voice even when the men make mistakes." Rebecca nodded, having already sensed these qualities in him. "He mentioned his mother was a teacher. She taught him to value learning, see his library, many books, he reads every night." Alina gave Rebecca a sidelong glance. "He would make a good husband, a good father." Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not looking for a husband, Alina." "My position in Challies." Alina shrugged, smiling. "Just an observation. The right man changes what we think we want." She patted Rebecca's hand. "Come, let me show you how we make cheese, important skill for any woman on the frontier." By the time Vincent returned, Rebecca had immersed herself in ranch life, helping Alina prepare a midday meal and learning the basics of cheese making. Vincent found them in the kitchen, Rebecca's sleeves rolled up as she kneaded dough under Alina's watchful eye. "You've been busy," he observed, removing his hat and hanging it by the door. Rebecca looked up, a smudge of flour on her cheek. "Alina has been teaching me practical frontier skills. I fear my Eastern education left some gaps." "You learn quick," Alina praised. "Natural talent for cooking." Vincent washed his hands at the basin, then joined them at the table where various dishes were being prepared. "I came to see if you'd like to ride out with me this afternoon, Rebecca. There's a spot on the property I thought you might enjoy seeing." After the meal, Rebecca found herself riding beside Vincent on a gentle mare he'd selected especially for her. They followed a creek that wound through the property, eventually climbing a gentle slope to a ridge overlooking the entire valley. From this vantage point, the ranch looked like a peaceful island in a sea of wilderness, with mountains rising majestically in the distance. "This is my thinking spot," Vincent said as they dismounted. "When decisions need making or troubles need sorting, I come here." Rebecca walked to the edge of the ridge, taking in the breathtaking view. "I can see why. It puts things in perspective." Vincent stood beside her, not too close, respecting her space. "When I first saw this land, I knew this was where I belonged. Some places just speak to you." "I've never felt that," Rebecca admitted softly. "Not in Boston, certainly. I hoped Challies might be different." And now she glanced at him, then quickly away. "I don't know yet." They stood in companionable silence for several minutes, the wind playing with Rebecca's hair, loosening strands from her careful arrangement. Vincent seemed content to simply exist in the moment, a quality Rebecca found both unusual and calming. "May I ask what brings you west, truly?" He finally said, "Teaching positions exist in the East with far fewer hardships." Rebecca tensed, then slowly exhaled. This man had saved her life, opened his home to her. If anyone deserved honesty, it was him. I needed to leave Boston, she said carefully. There was a man, Alexander. He was charming, educated, promised me marriage. When I discovered I was with child, he disappeared. Turns out he was already married with a family in New York. Vincent's expression remained neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. In Boston, an unmarried expectant mother has few options, Rebecca continued, her voice steady despite the pain of recollection. My parents disowned me. The school where I taught dismissed me. A friend helped me secure the position in Challies where no one knows my past. Vincent turned to face her fully. You're with child, Rebecca nodded, unconsciously placing a protective hand over her still flat stomach. About 3 months along now, in Challies I plan to claim to be a widow. It's the only way I might keep both my child and my respectability. That's a heavy burden to bear alone, Vincent said quietly. I have little choice, Rebecca replied. I won't give up my baby and I need to work to support us both. Vincent studied the horizon, his profile strong against the afternoon sky. There are good people in Challies, he said finally. But frontier life is hard enough with 2 parents. A woman alone, teaching while caring for an infant. He shook his head. I admire your courage, Rebecca, but I worry for you. His concern touched her more deeply than she expected. We'll manage, she said with more confidence than she felt. We must. They returned to the ranch as the sun began its descent, golden light bathing the valley. That evening, Vincent asked if she would mind dining alone with him, as Miguel and Alina were visiting their eldest son's family. I'm perfectly capable of cooking, he assured her when she looked surprised. Just not as well as Alina. Indeed, Vincent proved to be competent in the kitchen, preparing a simple but satisfying meal of venison stew, biscuits, and apple preserves. They ate at the kitchen table rather than the more formal dining room, the atmosphere relaxed and comfortable. As they finished their meal, Vincent cleared his throat. I've been thinking about your situation, he began cautiously. Rebecca tensed. Mr. Thorne, Vince, he corrected gently. Vince, she amended, I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision, he nodded. And I respect that, but I have a proposition that might make things easier for you. He met her gaze directly. My ranch is doing well, but it needs a woman's touch. I've been looking to hire a housekeeper who could also help with the accounts. I noticed you have a way with numbers when you were helping me sort those feed receipts yesterday. Rebecca blinked in surprise. You're offering me employment? Here? Yes. The position would include room and board for you and your child, plus wages. You'd have your own cottage. There's a small one near the orchard that needs some fixing up, but it would be private. He hesitated. If you stayed through winter and still wish to take the teaching position in spring, I wouldn't stand in your way. But why? Rebecca asked, genuinely perplexed. You hardly know me, Vincent's expression softened. I know enough. You're educated, hardworking, and in a difficult situation through no fault of your own. He shrugged. Besides, finding good help out here isn't easy. Most women who come west are already married or spoken for. Rebecca considered his offer. It was practical, generous, and would give her time to prepare for the baby without the immediate pressure of teaching. But it also meant staying here, where she was already feeling a dangerous pull toward this quiet, honorable man. May I have some time to consider? She asked. Of course, Vincent replied. Take all the time you need. That night, Rebecca lay awake long into the night, weighing her options. The teaching position in Challies had seemed like her salvation when she arranged it from Boston, a fresh start where no one knew her story. But Vincent's offer presented advantages she couldn't ignore. Here, she already had allies in Alina and Miguel. The work seemed less demanding than managing a classroom while pregnant and later with an infant. And the cottage would provide privacy while still offering the support of the ranch community. Then there was Vincent himself. In just a few days, she had grown to respect and admire him. His straightforward manner, his quiet competence, the way he treated everyone with dignity regardless of their station, these qualities were increasingly rare in her experience. And though she tried to deny it, she felt drawn to him in ways that both comforted and frightened her. By morning, she had made her decision. She found Vincent at breakfast, already dressed for the day's work. I've considered your offer, she said as she poured herself coffee. I accept with one condition. Vincent raised an eyebrow, waiting. I want to write to the school board in Challies immediately, explaining that I cannot take the position. It wouldn't be fair to leave them without a teacher so close to the start of term. Rebecca sat across from him. And I would like to revisit the arrangement after the baby is born to ensure it's still working for both of us. Vincent nodded, a smile warming his features. Those seem like reasonable terms. We have a deal, Miss Edwards. Rebecca, she corrected with a small smile of her own. The next several weeks passed in a flurry of activity as Rebecca settled into life at Thorne Ranch. True to his word, Vincent set about renovating the small cottage near the orchard, enlisting Miguel and his sons to help replace the roof, fix the windows, and build new furniture. Rebecca divided her time between learning the household accounts from Vincent and domestic skills from Alina, finding satisfaction in both. As September turned to October, the first signs of Rebecca's pregnancy began to show. She took to wearing looser dresses, though she made no effort to hide her condition from the ranch hands, who followed their employer's lead in treating her with nothing but respect. The cottage was completed by mid-October, a cozy two-room affair with a small kitchen, a comfortable bedroom, and a covered porch facing the orchard. Vincent had added unexpected touches, bookshelves filled with volumes from his own collection, curtains that Alina had sewn from cheerful yellow fabric, and a rocking chair placed near the fireplace. "It's perfect," Rebecca whispered as she stood in the middle of the main room, taking it all in. "There's one more thing," Vincent said, leading her to the bedroom. There, beside the bed, stood a beautifully crafted cradle. "I made it myself," he added almost shyly. "My father taught me woodworking before he passed." Rebecca traced the smooth curves of the cradle, emotion welling up inside her. "It's beautiful, Vince. I don't know how to thank you. Seeing you settled and safe is thanks enough," he replied, his voice gentle. That night, her first in the cottage, Rebecca sat in the rocking chair before a crackling fire, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the autumn chill. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with hope rather than struggle. The baby moved within her, a fluttering sensation that brought tears to her eyes. "We're going to be all right," she whispered, hands cradling her growing belly. "We've found a safe harbor." As winter approached, life on the ranch settled into a rhythm. Rebecca proved adept at managing the household accounts, freeing Vincent to focus on the physical aspects of running the ranch. The first snow fell in early November, transforming the landscape into a glistening wonderland. Rebecca, who had known only city winters, marveled at the pristine beauty. Vincent took to checking on her each morning and evening, often bringing firewood, fresh milk, or books he thought she might enjoy. Sometimes he stayed for coffee or a meal, their conversations ranging from practical ranch matters to philosophy, politics, and literature. Rebecca discovered that beneath Vincent's quiet exterior lay a well-read mind and thoughtful opinions. One evening in late November, as they sat before the fire after sharing a simple supper, Vincent asked about her plans for the baby. "Have you thought of names?" He inquired, his tone casual though his eyes were intent. Rebecca smiled. "If it's a boy, William, after my grandfather. For a girl, perhaps Grace or Elizabeth. I haven't quite decided." Vincent nodded, staring into the fire. "And after the birth, you mentioned reconsidering our arrangement." "I have been thinking about that," Rebecca admitted. "The school in Challies has hired someone else, so that option is gone, but perhaps there might be opportunities to teach closer by, maybe even here on the ranch for the workers' children." "I think that's a fine idea," Vincent said. Miguel's grandchildren could use some formal education, and there are several families at neighboring ranches with school-age children. Their eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of how their lives had become intertwined, of possibilities neither had anticipated. The moment was broken by a sharp knock at the door. Vincent rose to answer it, revealing Miguel, his expression grave. "Senor Vince, riders coming. Looks like trouble." Vincent's demeanor changed instantly, the relaxed evening companion replaced by the alert rancher. "Stay inside, Rebecca. Lock the door behind us. Before she could respond, both men had disappeared into the snowy night. Rebecca did as instructed, then peered anxiously through the window. In the distance, she could see torches approaching the main house, at least 6 riders moving at a determined pace. Nearly an hour passed before Vincent returned, his expression tight with controlled anger. "What's happening?" Rebecca asked as she let him in, noting the pistol holstered at his hip. "Cattle rustlers have been hitting ranches in the area," he explained, removing his coat. "They threatened to come after my herd next if I don't pay for protection. I refused." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. "Will they attack? Maybe. I've posted men around the property tonight and sent for the marshal in Sweetwater." Vincent ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "I'm sorry to bring trouble to your doorstep. This is my home too now," Rebecca said firmly. "What can I do to help?" Vincent looked at her with such warmth that Rebecca felt her heart skip. "Just stay safe. These men won't hesitate to use anyone I care about as leverage." The words "anyone I care about" lingered between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. The rustlers didn't attack that night, nor the next, but their threat hung over the ranch like a storm cloud. Vincent increased patrols and sent the younger ranch hands to escort Alina and the women from neighboring properties to town for safety. He insisted Rebecca remain at the ranch, however, believing the journey might be too risky in her condition. December arrived with bitter cold and more snow. Rebecca's pregnancy was now obvious, her belly round beneath her dresses. Vincent had taken to bringing her meals at the cottage to spare her the walk to the main house in the icy conditions, and their evening conversations had become a cherished ritual for both. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, Vincent arrived with not only dinner but also a small wrapped package. "What's this?" Rebecca asked as she set the table. "Early Christmas gift," he replied with a hint of shyness. "Go ahead, open it." Inside the package, Rebecca found a beautiful silver locket on a delicate chain. When opened, it revealed a tiny compartment. "I thought you might like something to keep a lock of the baby's hair when it comes," Vincent explained. Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes. "It's perfect," she whispered. "But I haven't gotten you anything." "Having you here is gift enough," he said simply. "The ranch feels like a home again, not just a place to work." Rebecca impulsively reached for his hand across the table. "Thank you for everything, Vince. For saving me on the road, for offering me a place here, for treating me with respect when so many others wouldn't." Vincent turned his hand to clasp hers, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "Rebecca," he began, his voice low and serious, "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, the door burst open, bringing with it a swirl of snow and a breathless ranch hand. "Mr. Thorne, rustlers in the north pasture. They're taking the cattle." Vincent was on his feet instantly. "How many?" "At least 8, sir. Miguel sent me to fetch you while the others try to hold them off." Vincent turned to Rebecca, conflict evident in his eyes. "I have to go." "I know," she said, rising as quickly as her condition would allow. "Be careful, Vince, please." He hesitated, then stepped forward and kissed her forehead swiftly. "Lock the door. There's a shotgun under my bed in the main house if you need it." Then he was gone, swallowed by the swirling snow and darkness. Rebecca paced the cottage for an hour, jumping at every sound, straining to hear anything over the howling wind. Finally, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, she bundled up in her warmest clothes and made her way cautiously to the main house, reasoning it would be safer than the isolated cottage if the rustlers came. The main house was dark and empty when she arrived, everyone having gone to defend the herd. Rebecca found the shotgun Vincent had mentioned and brought it to the kitchen, where she stoked the fire and put on water for coffee, suspecting the men would need warmth when they returned. 3 hours later, she heard horses approaching. Looking out the window, she saw Vincent leading the way, his men following behind. Relief flooded through her until she noticed Vincent was slumped in the saddle, one hand pressed to his side. Rebecca rushed to the door, throwing it open as the riders reached the house. "Vince," 2 ranch hands helped Vincent dismount, his face pale with pain. "It's not as bad as it looks," he grunted as they helped him inside, "just a graze." But when they removed his coat and shirt by the firelight, Rebecca could see it was more than a graze. A bullet had torn through the flesh of his left side, leaving a bloody furrow. Not life-threatening if properly treated, but serious nonetheless. "Water, clean cloths, whiskey," Rebecca ordered, falling back on first aid knowledge she'd gained during the war when she'd volunteered at a hospital. The men jumped to obey while she helped Vincent to a chair. "The rustlers?" she asked as she began cleaning the wound. Vincent winced but remained stoic. "We drove them off, lost a few head of cattle, but could have been worse. Marshall's men caught 2 of them." Rebecca worked efficiently, cleaning and bandaging the wound with steady hands despite her racing heart. When she finished, she instructed the men to help Vincent to his bedroom upstairs. "I'll check on him through the night," she told Miguel. "You all get some rest." Despite Vincent's protests that she needed rest herself in her condition, Rebecca settled into a chair beside his bed, determined to monitor his condition. He had lost blood, and in the harsh frontier winter, even minor wounds could turn dangerous without proper care. Through the long night, Rebecca dozed intermittently, waking to check Vincent's temperature and change his bandages. Near dawn, she woke to find him watching her, his blue eyes clear. "You should be in bed," he chided gently. "So should you, but here we are," she replied, moving to check his forehead for fever. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been shot," he said with a wry smile, "but better than I might, thanks to your nursing." Rebecca returned to her chair. "I learned during the war." The hospital needed all the help they could get. Vincent reached for her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "What I was trying to tell you earlier before we were interrupted. I need to say it now." Rebecca's heart quickened. "Yes. These past months with you here have been the happiest of my life," Vincent said, his voice low but firm. "I know your situation is complicated and I have no right to ask anything of you, but I've grown to care for you, Rebecca, deeply." Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. "Vince, you don't need to answer now," he continued. "Or ever, if that's your choice. I just wanted you to know that whatever you decide about your future, I would be honored if you'd consider sharing it with me, you and the baby both." Tears filled Rebecca's eyes. "You barely know me," she whispered, "and the child isn't yours." Vincent's gaze never wavered. "I know everything I need to know about you. As for the child, any man can father a baby. It takes something more to be a father." Rebecca could no longer hold back her emotions. "I care for you too, Vince, more than I thought possible after everything that happened, but I'm afraid." "Of what?" he asked gently. "Of trusting again, of believing in something good only to have it taken away." She placed her free hand protectively over her stomach. "I have more than just myself to consider now." Vincent nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, and I would never rush you. Just know that my feelings won't change however long it takes you to decide." The next week passed in a blur of activity as Vincent recovered and the ranch returned to normal operations. The marshal had captured most of the rustling gang, ending the threat to the area ranches. With Christmas approaching, Alina and the other ranch families who had returned from town began preparations for a holiday celebration. Rebecca threw herself into these preparations, using the activity to process her complicated feelings. Vincent's declaration had unleashed emotions she had carefully guarded since Alexander's betrayal. The possibility of love, real, honest love, both thrilled and terrified her. On Christmas Eve, the entire ranch gathered in the main house for a feast and celebration. Vincent, still moving carefully but healing well, presided at the head of the table, with Rebecca seated at his right. The room glowed with candlelight and warmth as Miguel led the group in traditional Mexican Christmas songs, followed by American carols that everyone knew. After the meal, gifts were exchanged, practical items mostly, with special treats for the children. Vincent presented Rebecca with a beautiful knitted blanket for the baby made by Alina and the other ranch women. Rebecca, in turn, gave Vincent a journal she had bought in Boston, its leather cover now inscribed with his initials. "For your thoughts and plans," she explained as he ran his fingers over the embossing. "A rancher should record his legacy." As the evening wound down and families began to depart for their own homes, Vincent asked Rebecca to remain behind for a moment. "There's something I want to show you," he said, leading her to his study. From a drawer in his desk, he removed a small box. "This belonged to my mother," he explained, opening it to reveal a simple gold band. "It's not fancy, but it meant everything to her." Rebecca's heart pounded as he continued. "I'm not asking for an answer now," Vincent said carefully. "But I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, this is waiting. I love you, Rebecca. I think I have since that first day on the ridge when you told me your story with such courage and dignity." Rebecca reached out, touching the ring with trembling fingers. "Vince, there's something I need to tell you first, something I've been afraid to admit." Vincent waited, his expression open and patient. "I love you too," she whispered, the words both frightening and liberating. "But I'm carrying another man's child," she confessed, voicing the obstacle that seemed insurmountable to her. A reminder of my greatest mistake, Vincent took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "Then we'll love it together," he replied without hesitation. "That child is a part of you, and I already love every part of you, Rebecca." Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks as Vincent pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of both his healing wound and her pregnancy. In that embrace, she found something she had never expected to find on the frontier, not just safety or security, but a love built on mutual respect and understanding. 2 days after Christmas, with Miguel serving as witness and Alina beaming in the front row of the small Sweetwater church, Rebecca Edwards became Rebecca Thorne. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, the couple exchanging vows with clear voices and sure hearts. Rebecca wore her best dress, altered by Alina to accommodate her growing belly, and carried a bouquet of evergreen sprigs and dried flowers from the ranch greenhouse. "Not how I imagined my wedding day," Rebecca admitted as they rode back to the ranch afterward. 7 months pregnant and miles from anywhere familiar, Vincent smiled, his arm secure around her waist as they shared his horse. "Regrets?" She leaned back against his chest, feeling truly at peace for the first time in months. "Not a single one." Winter settled fully over the land, burying the ranch in snow that glittered like diamonds in the sunlight. Rebecca moved from her cottage to the main house, though Vincent insisted on keeping the smaller building ready for when she might want to teach school there in the future. January and February passed in domestic contentment as the couple adjusted to married life. Vincent proved to be a considerate husband, attentive to Rebecca's needs as her pregnancy advanced. For her part, Rebecca flourished in her new role, bringing order and warmth to the household while maintaining the ranch accounts with meticulous care. In early March, as the first hints of spring began to soften the winter landscape, Rebecca went into labor. Alina, who had assisted at dozens of births, served as midwife, while Vincent paced anxiously outside the bedroom door. After hours of labor that tested Rebecca's endurance to its limits, the cry of a newborn finally pierced the tense silence. "A boy," Alina announced proudly as she opened the door to admit Vincent. Strong and perfect. Vincent approached the bed where Rebecca lay exhausted but radiant, the tiny bundle cradled in her arms. "William Vincent Thorne," she said softly as her husband sat beside her, carefully touching the downy head of the newborn. "If that suits you, it's perfect," Vincent whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "He's perfect. You're perfect." As Vincent gazed down at the child who was not of his blood but already firmly in his heart, Rebecca saw in his eyes exactly what he had promised, not mere acceptance, but genuine love. In that moment, the last of her fears melted away, replaced by the certainty that she had indeed found her home, not in a place, but in this man and the family they were building together. Spring arrived in earnest, bringing new life to the ranch. William, or Will, as he was quickly nicknamed, thrived under the doting attention of his parents and the extended ranch family. Rebecca recovered her strength rapidly and, true to her word, began holding small classes in the cottage for the ranch children and those from neighboring properties. One warm evening in May, as Rebecca sat on the porch nursing Will while Vincent worked nearby repairing a bridle, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. "A year ago, I thought my life was over," she said quietly. "When Alexander left me pregnant and alone, I couldn't imagine finding happiness again." Vincent set aside his work and moved to sit beside her. "And now," Rebecca smiled, looking from their son to her husband. Now I know that what seemed like an ending was really a beginning. If the stagecoach hadn't been attacked, if you hadn't come along that day. Providence, Vincent suggested, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, or just plain good luck. Either way, I'm grateful, Rebecca replied, leaning into his embrace. For you, for Will, for this life we're building. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Vincent kissed his wife tenderly, then his son's forehead. So am I, Rebecca, he murmured. So am I. 5 years later, the Thorne Ranch had prospered beyond Vincent's original vision. The cattle operation had expanded, additional hands had been hired, and the main house had been enlarged to accommodate a growing family. Will, now a sturdy 5-year-old with his mother's auburn hair and his adoptive father's blue eyes, had been joined by 3-year-old twins, James and Sarah, who were the image of Vincent. Rebecca's school had grown as well, moving from the cottage to a proper schoolhouse built on the ranch property, where she taught children from several neighboring ranches 3 days a week. The remaining time she devoted to her family and to writing educational materials for frontier teachers, which had gained attention as far away as Denver. On a perfect autumn afternoon, as golden light bathed the land, Rebecca stood on the ridge where Vincent had first brought her years before. Beside her, Vincent held little Sarah in his arms while the boys explored nearby, carefully supervised. Hard to believe this all started with a stagecoach robbery, Vincent mused, surveying the thriving ranch below them. Rebecca slipped her hand into his free one. And a cowboy with impeccable timing, and a schoolteacher with more courage than sense traveling alone in dangerous territory, he teased. Rebecca laughed, the sound carrying on the breeze. I wasn't alone for long, thanks to you. Vincent's expression grew serious. Do you ever regret it? Giving up your independence for this life? Rebecca looked at their children while constructing an elaborate fort from sticks while James attempted to help, Sarah contentedly playing with her father's bandana. Then she looked at Vincent, the man who had not only saved her life but given her a reason to truly live it. Not for a single moment, she answered truthfully. I didn't give up independence, Vince. I gained a partner. There's a difference. Vincent smiled, the same smile that still made her heart skip after all these years. I love you, Rebecca Thorne. And I love you, she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as the wind carried the scent of pine and promise across the Wyoming wilderness they called home. As the family made their way back down the ridge toward the ranch house, Rebecca paused to watch the sunset paint the horizon in spectacular color. She thought of the frightened young woman she had been, fleeing Boston with nothing but hopes and fears for company. That woman could never have imagined this life rich with love, purpose, and belonging. Mama, look, Will called, pointing to a hawk soaring overhead. He's free, Rebecca smiled, taking her eldest son's hand. Yes, he is, just like us.